Good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you may be in. My name is Glen Sayes, and my topic for this discussion group today is the integrated service delivery, what I like to call a true continuum of care. A lot of things are called continuum of care, very few actually accomplish that purpose. I am the director of the Substance Abuse Solutions Department of the Upper Cumberland Human Resources Agency, UCHRA. We're located in Cookeville, Tennessee, and our region is a 14-county rural region right in between Knoxville and Nashville and just north of Chattanooga. To understand the program that I have established here in the Upper Cumberland, you need to understand my motivation. And this is actually more than a motivation. This is actually my passion. This comes from two areas. First of all, my professional background was technical implementation of large computer systems, mostly in the manufacturing arena. You've got to have logistic and strategic controls of everything that you're doing to get a process accurately defined for a manufacturing company. So that was my professional background and my training and what I did for a living. Personally, let me introduce you to my son, Nathan. Now I have two boys, two sons. There is Dustin on the left, and Dustin is a retired major from the U.S. Army. Can't believe I'm old enough to have a retired major from the Army as a son, but that's Dustin. The little blondie on the right-hand side is Nathan. Nathan, 17 years ago, was a professional snowboarder. Now, we were living in Seattle, Washington at the time, and professional snowboarding is an actual profession there in the Seattle area. He was good enough that he participated in tournaments, and he was filmed and photographed all the time doing the double backflips and the tricky procedures that you see on snowboarding competitions. This is a photo of him on the cover of one of the magazines at the time. 17 years ago, he was involved in a major snowboarding accident up on the mountain. They took him off the mountain on a stretcher, embedded a 9-inch titanium rod in his arm, took him to the hospital, and gave him his first 90-day prescription of Oxycontin, then his second 90-day prescription of Oxycontin. So our son, who was great in school, great in athletics, leader in his church youth group, was a year later a homeless heroin addict in the Seattle area. This is a picture of Nathan about 2 years ago, and it was a very sad picture for me to take. That this was my son. That was my personal motivation for the development of what is a hub and spoke implementation. I was frustrated that we could produce lawnmowers and radios and watches with intricacy and strategic and logistic controls of quality and just in time getting all the components there. But when it came to getting my son help, there were always gaps in the system in between. From the time he said, I want help, to the time we could get him into detox, or between detox and treatment, between treatment and housing, there was always gaps. And we were constantly going through this cycle of him getting started into recovery, but never being able to finish. So I was determined. And about 7 years ago, I came out of retirement and said, I've got to find a solution. Hub and spoke is what I discovered. Now, we are very innovative in our implementation of hub and spoke. Normally, the implementations of the hub are from a treatment center. The treatment center does the treatment, and then they have all of the resources around them for doing the other things that are necessary in recovery. The problem with that is there is no motivation for putting a person that is coming to you somewhere else. You've got a profit incentive of keeping that person within your treatment program. No offense to the treatment programs out there. I love you and we work with all of you. And that is the point of having a hub that is an objective source, an objective center of activities. We centralize the data, the reporting, the communication between the time a person raises their hand and says, I need help, to the time that we see them in true recovery. I'm going to go through a little bit of this process with you. We don't have a whole lot of time, but let me go through the chart here. We're looking at balancing economic development within our region with health improvement within our region. We have referrals that come to us from the recovery courts, from the hotline, from EMS, the emergency services, and from the hospitals, and people just calling us and saying, my son, my daughter, my grandson, my husband, my niece, nephew needs help. Can you help them? We immediately assign a recovery coordinator. A recovery coordinator is a case manager that has peer experience. All of our recovery coordinators are certified peer recovery specialists. They meet with the person. We insist that we meet with the person within 24 hours from when we learn about them. We will sit down with them. We will do an intake, who they are, what their experience is, helping them define what is their next step in the process. Once we have defined what that next step is, and if it's a person that's coming to us for the first time, that first step is normally treatment. So at that point, we begin looking for the appropriate first available treatment program that we can get them in. Now, that first of all is the appropriate treatment, and then the next is most available. And we will travel all over the state of Tennessee. We've gone into Kentucky. We've gone into Mississippi. We will go all over, some in Florida, where we will place our clients into the first available. We are aiming at getting every person that comes to us that truly wants to get into a recovery program, getting them into a treatment program within 48 hours. And we don't just give them a telephone number. We don't just say, there's where you're signed up. We help them with the paperwork. We get their documentation. We will make sure that their initial fees are covered, and then we will drive them or arrange transport for that person to get to that treatment center. And whereas a lot of places will say, we did a good job with that and we got them into treatment, that's just the first step. When we have a bidirectional release of information with all of our treatment programs, and so far we have over 20 different programs that we have placed people into that range all the way from MAT programs to year-and-a-half residential faith-based residential programs. So we're looking at all options that are the best, most appropriate fit for that person. When we know that it is ready, the last 30 to 60 days before that person is coming out of that treatment program, that same recovery coordinator will meet with them, will begin planning with them what the next steps are when they get out. Too many times we have a person has been sheltered for 28 days or 6 months or a year and a half in a program. They come out of that program and they get thrown into the real world, and that's where they typically will relapse within the first 30 days after coming out of that program. So we're particularly attentive with them. The main items that we're looking at is employment, training, housing, and transportation. The big four there that we are working with them. But there's also legal issues and medical and dental issues, re-socialization. They've got to get a new set of people that they can depend on as friends, get them reestablished with their families, reunited, reestablished with their families, get them into support groups, and get them having fun again in their life. The recovery coordinator that starts with that person at the initial interview will stay with that person for a 2-year time period. We don't know of this innovative part being done anywhere in the country for one single recovery coordinator or case manager to follow that person through the full scope of their recovery. Very brief, very fast overview. I invite your questions about how we implement this, but before we do that, let me introduce you to our staff. We are doing all of this work right now with a staff of 7 people. This is 6 of us. I'm the old guy here in the wheelchair, and then we have James, who has over 20 years of lived experience and now over 20 years of recovery guidance. Nikki Payne, who is the most beautiful woman in the world, working with the girls, over 20 years of experience, both lived experience and recovery. Ryan, who is in charge of our relationship with the police department, Luke, whose specialty is housing, and Mr. Bill Gibson, who is our consulting attorney on our department. Great group. Where it comes down to the results, I can give you all kinds of numbers. Since July of 2020, in the middle of the COVID, we started our program and we have registered over 362 people into our program that have come to us and said, I need help. We are traffic directors. We're not doing the work ourselves. We're simply directing those people from where they are to where they need to go and putting a caseworker or recovery coordinator in the car with them to make sure that they get to that next destination. This is George. George is a professional auto mechanic that had not had his driver's license in 26 years. We worked in conjunction with the Legal Aid Society and extreme cash management on his part, and within 6 months we had his driver's license back after 26 years. This is Larry Elmore, that before he came to us had been in the hospital for pneumonia 3 times within a 4-month time period because he was living in his car. We got him out of his car, we got him into transitional housing for about 4 months, then we were able to get him into permanent apartment housing, and you can see the smile on his face. Larry has not been back to the hospital in now the last 14 months. A family that we got from homelessness into permanent housing. A lady that we worked with for nearly 6 months to get her a housing voucher. We put her up in transitional housing for that 6 months, and she wrote a beautiful story of what we did for her. We moved her into a new apartment. Now, someone who has not lived in their own apartment for the last 10 years doesn't have anything. So our auxiliary group of supporters came alongside. We arranged for furniture and household furnishings. There's Luke, our housing manager, James, our one of our recovery coordinators that was working with us on this deal, and Charles. Now, Charles is here helping move the furniture into Angie's apartment. But this is earlier in the day when we helped move Charles into his apartment. And some of the furniture and furnishings that we were able to provide for him getting into his first apartment that he had had in years. John is a person that we met during the point in time count, and one of our pollers asked, well, what do you need, John? He said, I really need a bike. He said, I've got to walk every day about 1.5 miles to work. And he was doing this in the snow, as you can see in the background. So we got on the phone, we found a bike for him from a contributor, and we gave him a bicycle and a chain to lock it up. And there was the reward from John. Now, John is still living homeless in the Cookeville area, but he knows he has a resource to come to. Now, my favorite story out of all of the stories from the last 1.5 years is, this is Nathan. This is my son, Nathan, who moved here from Seattle, Washington, 1 year and 6 months ago. He's been completely clean. He's got a full-time job with Coca-Cola. He's made every payment on the house that he is renting. He is there with his fiance, and I'm very proud to say that's my favorite story of my son Nathan, who is 1.5 years clean and doing great. And he's establishing a new program within Cookeville called Good Clean Fun, where he's going to operate an organization that provides fun activities both for people that are in recovery and also people that are not in recovery. So get people integrated with good, clean fun, and have fun activities in a sober, clean and sober environment, but also doing good work in the community. He wants it to be a service organization. So I'm very proud of my son, Nathan. Purpose of Substance Abuse Solutions is we take a person from where they are to where they need to go. Our first objective is clarity of mind. You've got to get them to the point where the drugs are no longer controlling them and who they are and what they're doing. We've got to get clarity of mind. That is very often the treatment program. The next step is stability of their environment. They've got to have a place to stay, a job, a transportation to get between the two, and a good social support environment around them. So clarity of mind, stability of environment, that equals their ability to discover their purpose. When I sit down with an individual and I talk with them, I ask them lots of questions, and they generally have pretty pat answers for most of the questions. How did you get into this? What's going on? What are you doing right now? And they know the answers that I'm expecting them to give me. But then I ask them, Bill, George, Susan, Angie, what is your purpose? What is your purpose in life? The three great questions of philosophy are, where did I come from? Where am I going? And why am I here? And I ask them that, and all of a sudden they start thinking, what is my purpose? And after a few seconds, they realize, I have no purpose. I don't have a purpose. Maybe I used to have goals and aspirations, but right now I say, I know for the last year, 2 years, 5 years, 12 years, your purpose was getting to your next dose of your drug of choice. But my purpose is to help you find your purpose in life. And that truly is the purpose of our department, where we're going. We're the busiest traffic directors in the world. You imagine a traffic intersection with that guy dancing in the middle of the intersection. You stop, you come, you move in through here. That's who we are. We're traffic directors, moving people from where they are to where they need to be and putting a caseworker in the car with them to get them there safely. So that's who we are. I am open for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long, for any questions, and I would love to talk to you about this and explain the program, answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.